was gonna ask. You said you got into the space like 2 years ago and started getting your stuff, and
Almost, yeah.
not like it's. I mean, it's fairly common from what I've seen is that it takes a couple years to get your first deal under your belt. What do you feel like was your struggle that made it take almost 2 years to find the first deal and close on it and do all the?
It's the same struggle I still have. Just making them pencil, making the deals pencil. So like, you know, there's no. I mean, literally, I was checking my phone before I was walking up here, and like, I have like 20-something deals sitting in my inbox right now. But, you know, when you underwrite those, right, it's the broker's telling you one thing. And first of all, they're trying to sell you the deal, but beyond that, they're also not assuming. They're also not thinking about it. The syndication model kind of makes hitting those returns really difficult in some ways. You know, because you're technically asking. You know, typically the GP is going to put in 10%. So if it's a $5 million raise, the GPs will put in $500,000, and the other $4.5 million is going to come from the LPs. So they're putting in 90% of the capital. But on the return side, if it's say a 70-30 split, meaning the LPs get 70% of the returns, GPs get 30%. So they're putting in 90% of the capital and getting 70% of the return. You have to have a lot of meat on that deal to make that work. So, you know, the struggle for me is just, you know, making, like I said, making the deals pencil and making the returns look good. Because you can, you know, if, you know, I always play the game. If it's not working, I'll just make the split 100% and act like if I was Jeff Bezos, how would this look? The deals usually look pretty decent, but, you know, I'm not. So I have to account for how that's going to work, right? So that continues to be the struggle. I think I was told when I first got started, somebody mentions like, oh, you're going to have to look at 100 deals to find one. I think the number is more like 250 or 300. And actually, I mean, like this year, I think I've sort of quit counting at this point, or not. I haven't quit counting, but I don't remember the latest number. But I think it's over 200. But I think we're pushing 300, right? And most of that was actually like the first half of the year. Yeah.
Stop counting.
Yeah. So it's a lot of underwriting deals and a lot of rejection, and and I've gotten conflicting advice on this. Maybe Brian's got, you know, from a broker side, but like some people say submit every LOI, and you know I'm looking at it, I'm like, I'm $7 million off. I don't think I should submit this. But then other people are like, you know, if you submit that kind of an offer, they're just gonna like blacklist you. So I don't know.
That is the correct advice.
Yeah.
Off the board.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I would not suggest that strategy. Now, over the last couple of months, you know, I think there's select ones that you can do that on because of, you know, it's like Benjamin talked about last week.
Yeah. Don't be embarrassed of your number.
Yeah, exactly. Don't be embarrassed of your number. He said that he was looking at a deal as 16 million, but it didn't pencil out like that at all. He was thinking maybe, 14 or something like that million. And then the agent called him up and said, hey, you know what? The seller will take 13. Right? So what I'm saying is over the last couple of months, that's why I said that strategy early on wouldn't, because that will get you, can get you, blacklisted. But over the last couple of months, just because properties have been dropping, and I mean, I haven't had a single deal that I have as under contract where I am the selling broker. I haven't had a single one of those deals where the buying party hasn't come back and asked for price reduction, right? Yeah. Because of what's going on, with the market, and interest rates and all that, right? So that's why, there's a couple of times when I've encouraged a couple of people that, I think, it may be a little bit under what the asking price is, but I've recommended them to make an offer because I think, their even under market offer was going to be extremely strong based on where we are right now.
Well, and again, going back to relationships, I mean, this is kind of my theory, so here we go. But I have done this a couple of times with some other brokers. Like, some of it's relationship based in the sense of if you're off on your number compared to theirs, just have a conversation and just be like, this is where I land. Is it really worth your time? And they're going to say, in my experience, they say no. But the relationship isn't broken. It's just like I was just like, hey, this is where I am, and let me know if you want me to submit an LOI, I will, and if you don't, I won't.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
How are the returns distributed, like a quarterly basis, or are you doing like a waterfall promote structure, or is that more?
That's
be?
Do we need to define all that?
Yeah.
I feel like, does anybody know what that means, like waterfall and all that stuff? Well, so to answer your question, so waterfall is how the profits are distributed, essentially. And there's a million ways, 1,000,001, literally unique ways you can do this stuff. But to answer your question, like as far as when the distributions happen, quarterly or yearly, totally up to the GP. And that's actually one of the things as an LP when you're investing, you're going to get multiple documents. One of them is called the Private Placement Memorandum, PPM. And in there, it's going to describe how the money gets distributed. Definitely read that section. Because you don't want to assume, right? Like they might even tell you something and then, I haven't seen this happen to me yet, but they might tell you something, but you want to make sure it's in that document because that's the, that's the document that the lawyers are telling you, disclose. So from the GP side. So, it just depends on them. Like they could, technically a GP could say, there's no distributions. You'll get your profit in 5 years. See ya, but are you going to invest in that deal? I mean, probably not. So.
And I'd almost be willing to bet that if anybody started out doing distributions on a monthly basis, they probably quickly move to quarterly basis because that's a lot of work.
It's a lot of accounting.
A lot of work. So unless you're a CPA like Mike, he probably does it weekly. I'm just kidding, Mike.
Daily.
But, yeah, daily. Yeah, he's got this
Coming in the
spreadsheet.
mail, Brian, right?
Yeah, you probably have a spreadsheet for us tonight, don't you, or something? I'm just kidding. Yeah, yeah, from that, yeah. So distribution wise, most people are on a quarterly basis.
Yeah, I would say it's commonly quarterly, but you always want to check.
Yeah.
4 versus 12. As an operator, you do it 12 times or 4 times. Right?
Yep. There you go. Tommy.
So you're still working full-time job. So can you talk a little bit about the grit and persistence that it takes to stick with it? I guess you have to focus on the activity without gratification, right?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I would say it's not really even unique to having a W-2. Like even if I was doing this full-time, you're going to underwrite a lot of deals and get rejected. And, it's going to feel like a waste of time, right? So like part of that is, yes, you have to kind of just bear through it. And thankfully, I was kind of raised that way, I guess. Now that I'm getting older, I'm like, oh, thanks, Dad. 'Cause it goes back to, for me, it goes back to sports, right? Like nobody liked practice, but you would be out there 2-a-days in the summer because that's what you do to be good in the fall, right? So like, it's kind of the same mentality. It's just now it's on a computer and spreadsheets and whatever. But yeah, it's definitely very difficult, especially because so I work from home full time because engineers can do that, software engineers can, and that affords me a little bit of extra flexibility. At the same time, not really with this current new job. I just started it this year, and it's a little tougher. But yes, there's a lot of grit, but it's just kind of, for me, it's just do it, right? I mean, like either you want to do it or you don't. It's kind of my approach to it. So it's like, do I want to be a GP full time or do I not? And if I don't, then that'll evidence itself when I quit. But I can tell you I do, so there's not going to be any quitting. So that's where we land.
Yeah. Other questions?
What's your buy box? You mentioned penciling out a couple of times, so what does that look like for you?
For me, so that's, it's constant. I feel like it's sort of updating recently. Generally speaking, B class, C plus class. I'm really looking for 50 plus units because I want to syndicate, and like you can syndicate anything you want. You can syndicate a single family house if you wanted to, but the extra legal costs, there's got to be enough scale to make it make sense. So 50, I say 50 plus, really 50 to 150. The 227 stands out obviously, but I'm okay. I'm actually okay with going there. I just didn't think I could at this point, and then the opportunity presented itself. So, but that's generally what I'm looking for. Looking in Middle Tennessee, I mean, believe me, I would love to own everything in Nashville, but also willing to go down to Chattanooga and over to Knoxville and even Dalton, Georgia, and some places like that. Like basically, kind of this little area where we are. And then Florida has just become a recent one for me just because of the Jacksonville deal and then some other things that I'm kind of working on with different operators. Just like, Florida just makes a lot of sense. So.
Okay. Jen.
So if you wanted to invest in a syndication, what are the qualifications for you as a buyer, and do they change from being in the GP side versus the LP side?
What do you mean, do they change?
meaning that are there different requirements for,
They have to be accredited
do you have to-
investor or not,
yeah.
what?
Oh, okay, all that stuff. Yeah,
well,
so
there's people here in the audience
That may not know what an
No, yeah, no,
accredited
I
investor is and all
yeah,
that good stuff.
no, I mean that's fine. I wasn't
Yeah.
tracking. I was like, oh right,
Yeah.
that stuff. Yeah, so generally, so technically, a syndication, if you're raising capital on a deal, you're technically selling a security. You know, you're not actually selling a portion of that piece of real estate. They're not going to be on title. The LPs aren't. You're selling a security, and so part of all the laws have been enacted, the SEC Act of 1933 and yada, whatever, all that stuff. People cannot raise capital unless you are you cannot be a capital raiser unless you are a licensed broker-dealer, which means you've got to pass some certifications, you've got to register with your state. Depending on how much you raise, you have to register with the SEC, like federally. And so, you know, in order to raise into a syndication, you have to qualify for an exemption. And there's two of them that are generally used, although there's technically 4 total that you could use. 2 of them are headaches. So the 2 that you generally use are called 506B and 506C. And so what Jen is getting at is for a 506B syndication, you can only accept 35 non-accredited investors. And they have to be quote-unquote sophisticated investors, and you have to have a substantive relationship, pre-existing relationship with those investors. The benefit here, I haven't heard many people talk about this, but the benefit is the SEC has actually provided some really decent guidance on that. There was a case that happened or something. They put out like, here's 8 questions you need to ask your potential LPs, and if you know the answer to those 8, and then you foster the relationship, and that's the kind of gray area, then you're considered to be, you know, a pre-existing relationship. So that's for your 506B. You can take, in a 506B, you can take as many accredited investors as you want. That's fine, but it's basically only pre-existing relationships for the non-accredited. For a 506C, that one's accredited investors only. And so, you know, we can't, I mean, to be blunt, I can't invest in a 506C yet. I'm not there yet. So, but you can have as many as you want. You can have, you know, you can obviously set any minimum you want. But you can also, really the big distinction between the two, besides the fact that 506C is accredited only, 506B, you can accept 35 non-accredited. The major difference is really that you can advertise with a 506C. So if I'm raising a 506C deal, which actually that Jacksonville deal is, I can then post it on social media. I can, if I want to, I can run a Facebook ad or a Google ad or whatever, you know, all that kind of stuff. With a 506B, you definitely cannot do that. And if you do, that's where you get in some trouble. So, yeah. As far as like the requirements there, in case you're not aware, accredited investor just basically means $1 million net worth, not including your personal home, or $200,000 a year in income for the past 2 years with a reasonable expectation, whatever that means, of the next year being the same. And if you're married, it's $300,000 household income. So,
Yep.
if you meet either of those, you're accredited and you can do a 506C.
What's a sophisticated?
Well, the sophisticated investors, the eight questions. Those and there's actually, I mean, if you guys want it, come talk to me and I can get your contact info and send you. But Mauricio Rold, who's SEC attorney at Premier Law Group, he did a fantastic 40-minute YouTube thing on those 8 questions, like what they are, how you fulfill them, and everything around that. So if you want that info, he's awesome.
But do you have to be an accredited investor to be on the GP side?
No, you can be broke. You really can. I mean, as far as getting on the GP side, it's all about adding value to people, right? So that's why it's like getting started. You kind of focus on either I'm going to raise capital, and not technically, but yes, you are, and then or you're going to bring the deal, right? So you can be you can be broke, but if you find the deal, you bring it, and it qualifies, then you get that team put together, and there you go.
Convince somebody
Right.
to deal with you.
Right. Yeah.
And being a broker, we've met a couple of those broke people before. So. Yeah. So, Mike, I didn't mean to bring you. No, just kidding. So on your Jacksonville deal,
Mm-hmm.
when you're looking for LPs who are maybe looking to invest, what's the minimum requirement?
So for that one,
much?
again, this is all kind of dependent on the deal. So
Yeah.
there's no minimum.
Right.
You could technically you could accept $1,000 minimum if you wanted to. And I think Grant Cardone actually accepts doesn't he accept like $100 or something?
That's a regular.
Yeah, exactly. It's a little different, but so you can accept whatever you want. For ours, we just did 100,000 minimum.
Yeah.
And the pure reason is because, again, if you're syndicating, you have to do all the investor relations, right?
Yeah.
So on that deal, we are raising $15.6 million. So if we, even at 100,000, that's a lot of investors. If everybody just put the minimum. But imagine if you only did 25,000 minimum, it quadruples that number of investors, right? So, so for that one's 100, but it's whatever the GP says. But generally speaking, typically you're going to see 50 to 100 as your minimum.
So since you work a full-time job,
Yeah.
on average, how many deals a week do you underwrite?
Not as many as I should. So here's the thing. I feel bad right now because recently I've been getting lazy, sort of. I've been doing one a day, so 7 a week, right? But during the summer,
only one a day.
We'll keep sending
That's
more,
it.
Brian.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would say during the spring and summer when we were really hardcore going at it, I was probably doing 4 a night. So work 8 to 4, get off. Wife and kids don't get home till 6ish. So in 2 hours, I get 4 of them knocked out.
Yeah.
Or try to.
Yeah.
And it's pretty hardcore then. But now I feel like I've kind of loosened up somehow. So
When he was doing those 4 is when he was using Brandon's back of the napkin, and then he started using your spreadsheets, and then it turned into 1. See what you did to him?
He knows.
Mike, come on.
It's okay. He'll get the one right.
Yeah. Tommy, I think you had another question.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to clarify. You can definitely be broke and syndicate deals. That is very possible. If you need cash, this is not the business model for you. This is not a cash flow business. This is an equity appreciation business. So that's why you typically see people tying some other cash flow businesses, whether it's short-term rental, property management, or something like that, alongside this. And you couple a cash flow business with
that's
equity.
also why I let off with for me it's kind of a means to an end. Not that my intention is to syndicate the rest of my life, but right now I would do one a month if I could, 1 a day if I could. But that's because I'm trying to get that principle right. As those syndications would sell, I as a GP get my share and grow that up and be a once I place all that, be a full-time LP. But that's it's a business, right? Syndicating is a business. Investing as an LP, that's your passive investment. That's where you get your cash flow, your passive income, your mailbox money, or whatever. So
Yeah. And then another thing too is after you own properties for a number of years, become that LP on a number of, or GP on a number of them, you also, and build those relationships among other investors. And then if somebody wants to invest in that first property, and they want to use agency debt, they're going to be looking for a sponsor, somebody to sponsor that deal. So then you can become a sponsor on that deal, which is another revenue stream, right? So that's another thing to look at. So
for sure, yeah.
yeah. So, all right. Other questions? We got about five minutes left.
When do you put that on it?
When I do what? Sorry.
When you put that on the one in Jacksonville?
What do you mean when? Just in the timeline? It's
it was. You only doing it? Are you closing cash?
No. We're buying. We're actually the reason. So we went under contract in June. It was supposed to have closed in September, and we just got notice last week it's going to be November. So, but the reason for that is the debt, because the bank keeps. There's a story, man. It was the first lender, and then everything happened with interest rates, and the LTC went down, and we had to change lenders, and now all that stuff. But no, it's in the middle. It's during that whole process. You get it under contract, and as you're doing your due diligence, you're getting your SEC attorney to put stuff together. You're getting your bank to put the debt on. You're raising money, so it's it's a lot going on.
It's a fun 60 days.
Yeah, it's a busy 60 to 90 to 120 days we're at or something.
Yeah.
So in the syndication, you're just raising the equity. So 20.
Yeah.
20-25% down.
Right. Well, I mean, you could raise enough equity to then buy the property in cash and cash out refinance, but I don't know that that's probably the most efficient way, honestly. And also, it's hard to raise $37 million in this case. It's hard enough to raise 15.
If you're going to pay cash.
What's the cap rate, and then what's your interest rate?
The cap rate on that deal is 4.9 something. The interest on it, the top, so it's a bridge. So maybe you get to go into any of that kind of stuff. But it's a bridge loan, but the cap on the bridge is 6.25. So.
Yeah.
So isn't that like?
So what's your,
Mhm.
go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna ask, like, you said he can be broke and be a syndicator, but then you were saying like the GPs
Yeah.
get paid at the end when you sell it. So
So how do you live?
if I was broke, if I was broke and I want to be a syndicator, then how would I get? And I didn't put any money into it. How would I get paid as a GP at the end?
Well, if you're on the GP team, then presumably you're doing some work, so you'd get your share of the equity. So, as an example, if you find the deal, you might get 10% of the GP, and the GP gets maybe 30% of the whole deal, so or the whole structure. So, you know, you would get your money that way. But obviously, either the more value you bring, or if you can put in money like earnest money or any other kind of risk capital, or whatever you have, like obviously that'll increase your returns. But yeah, technically you don't have to put anything in, but also you have to. You have to get that to work with your GP team, like the other people, and then the GP team as a whole. If you don't put any money in, you have to make sure your LPs are cool with that, which I don't know that they would be. So I wouldn't try that.
They want skin in the game.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Trevor.
We talked about this earlier today on our Zoom, but I kind of really wanted to dig into the details. But would it be a conflict of interest if you could, like, bring the labor? Like, if you had a GC license, or if you own a construction business, could you come into the syndication?
I think that's a great value
Yeah,
to
it's
bring to
not
the team. I don't think that's a conflict.
Provide the labor, we'll build it out.
Yeah, you have to disclose it. Like everything, that's what Mauricio would say, the SEC attorney. Disclose. So you disclose all of it. But yeah, as long as you do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's just a good strength to have.
Just another team member.
Yeah.
Leah.
So is the end goal to sell it, or is it more to keep it and have that property management, keep that cash flow?
Again, that depends on the GP team and the LPs and kind of what their plan is. I mean, most syndicators are trying to sell in 5 years, and the reason why is because they get paid at the end. But I know there's one syndicator I know of that he talks about. He's in the Phoenix, Arizona market. He's got properties that he's owned for 20 years. He's done like 3 or 4 different refinances on, and he's like, he actually said on a podcast recently, he's like, I've done 3 value adds on one property. So, it kind of depends on that particular team's interest, But he's like the one person I know that does that. Everybody else seems to want to sell. So.
Yeah, and you do have some people that want to own it for X amount of time, and then they want to do a refi cash out, and then take that money and go buy another property too, right? So.
And that's
all
tax-free
depends
money.
on-
That's the big plus on
Yep,
that too.
Yeah, all depends on what the strategy is for, that's why as an LP, you kind of want to know what the strategy is for not only managing it, having an asset manager, but the overall strategy of when you plan on cashing that thing out.
And we didn't get to talk about this, and we're out of time. But yeah, the reason I like to hold cash out refinance because I want to pay the government as little. I don't think I owe them a single penny. So, so I'm always trying to find a way not to pay them. And the cash out refinance and hold and all that, it's because it's debt. It's not taxed. So you can harvest that equity out and just keep getting tax free money.
Would that apply to owner financing?
Yes, on the buyer side. On the seller side, the interest you're paying, he has to pay taxes on that. But on the buyer side, yes, it still count.
Yeah.
We're seeing a lot more of that, that's why I'm saying.
Yeah, so there are a ton of things we didn't even get to on syndication.
Anything about debt?
What
seems
is
like we skipped over all of
Come
it.
back
yeah,
again.
yeah. What's the last thing you'd really like to tell somebody about syndication?
I would say, well, I guess on the LP side, I would say understand and we didn't get into this, and I kind of had in my head that we would, but how the returns work. And what I mean is, like, you're going to get all these, nobody's ever going to give you a bad pro forma, first of all, obviously. But when they give you a pro forma, like, no 2 deals are the same in the sense that you might have 2 guys tell you, hey, look, I'm going to double your money in 5 years. Hey, I'm going to double your money in 5 years. But if you take a look at how that actually works out, right, like the actual per year cash flow, you're going to see one that may say, hey, over the 5 years, you get no distributions, but you get double your money at the end. Your IRR will suck. But, it is what it is. If you like that kind of deal, you're going to have somebody else who's going to say, hey, you're going to get 10,000, 12,000, 14,000, and you get a pop at the end too. And the point is, while the returns are the same in both of those instances, the risk profile is different on those 2 deals. So, you have to figure out for yourself what you're okay with. Me personally, if you're not paying distributions, I'm not investing with you because you're just flipping a property, and that seems super dangerous in my opinion. But just be aware that like you have to get into some of that math and understand that and how that works, and understand how it fits into whatever your personal risk profile is on a deal. So.
Yeah. And last thing I'm going to say is both of our speakers are very active on social media. So I know Drew is in with some other people of doing.
It's a
what is
social
it,
media
30?
challenge.
It's
Yeah,
a 30 day,
30 days, and we're
30 days.
8 days
and so
in. I'm out of content.
If you don't follow
So-
him, you need to, because
Yeah.
every day he's got something on social media about multifamily. So you need to follow him. How do
I
they
appreciate
follow
it.
you?
Well, so to get in contact with me, you can go to swiftcitycapital.com. That's my site. You can go to Instagram. I think it's, I can't remember, MF_Drew_, and that stands for multifamily, by the way. So here's the thing.
Wow, I was wondering there for a minute.
I chose that on purpose because I knew it was a little provocative, and I had an old friend text me, he's like, "Did you really name yourself that?" And I was like, "It's multifamily, man."
Yeah.
I like the other way around.
Yeah.
So yeah, on Instagram you can find me there, and then on Facebook it's Drew Pitchford. Everything's public, but add me as a friend. So
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, thank you.
Yeah, appreciate
And
it.
as always, we have nice, warm, hot Tiff's treats, cookies for you.
I
So-
appreciate it. The real reason I did this. So.
Yeah. Yeah. So,